I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then we have a special treat this evening.
We should stand for this too.
So if you'd all please stand for the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. Don't go far. We'll see you in a few minutes. All members are present tonight. Dr. Stallo is not in attendance, but taking her place is Assistant Superintendent Mr. Holmberg. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
By Todd, do I have a second?
Second.
By Lee. All those in favor signify by saying, oh, we have a question.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda.
Go ahead.
Since it's been 2 months since our last board meeting, and there have been many valid questions and suggestions in terms of the topic of security throughout our school district, many districts around the country are adding conversations at their board meetings about the discussion of having a security safety committee. So I'd like to add to our agenda that we have a discussion about the idea of having a security safety committee added.
Do I have a second for that motion?
Just a committee?
A discussion about having a committee.
A discussion about having a committee? I'd second that one.
Okay. We have the sub-motion on the approval of the agenda. Any comments, questions, or concerns
I
upon
think that is something
motion?
we should bring at the study session to look at, to develop, find out what other people are doing, and direct administration to pull forth a guidelines. I think it's a perfect study session issue.
Go ahead, Stacy.
I think there's been questions and comments from the community, and I think information's being collected, and the plan is, I think, a meeting in April is what I've been telling people in the community, is what Dr. Stallo has communicated.
Any other question?
I would agree. I think it'd be a great study session question or discussion to have, and also to find out what we do actually have in place to make sure that people already know that,
Okay.
build on that.
So did you want to, I guess, can you refine your motion for me? Did you want the discussion to occur tonight, or did you want to add it on a future study session?
Well, we've had study sessions, and it hasn't been a topic of the agenda, and I think it's very
It's
important.
never
But
been
point of
approached.
clarification there, has anything been brought forth to the
The
chair?
board chair has not seen any of those communications brought to me, or I don't think the superintendent has seen any of those requests for that topic to be on the agenda for a study session. If you would like that to be, we can.
I think we need to have it on a study session
Okay.
as soon as possible.
Okay,
I'm
I will
surprised it
bring,
wasn't
if
on
it'll
tonight.
satisfy the board, then I will bring that topic to a future study session. We'll talk to Superintendent Stallo and see, take that note for follow-up. Okay. So do we have to vote on the?
Unless- should
Martha,
send-
do we have to
should
vote?
you
I
rescind?
can rescind the motion.
Okay.
I
Okay,
formally rescind the motion.
okay, thank you. All right. My parliamentarian. Okay, so we are back to voting on the approval of the agenda. We have a first motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. On tonight's consent agenda is the check wire transfer disbursement summary, the wire transfer EFT and ACH banking activity, the bank reconciliation statement, the building bond investment reports, and the approval of the school board minutes from the February 12th legislative meeting, the February 12th regular meeting, and the February 26th study session, resignations, terminations, and non-renewals. I need a motion for the acceptance of the consent agenda
So made.
by Stacy. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Ben. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Next on the agenda is the resolution for the acceptance of gifts. We have two gifts on tonight's agenda, both from the Wells Fargo Community Sport Campaign for Hidden Oaks. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of the gifts?
So moved.
By Mary, do I have a second?
Second.
By Stacy. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
It's a roll call, Rich.
Aye.
Oh, it's a roll call.
Aye.
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 That passes 7-0. Next on the agenda is Laker Pride. Mr. Holmberg.
All right, good evening, everyone. Since we are in the month of March, just for a few more days, this is the time that we celebrate Music in the Schools Month. So this evening, we had our Prior Lake High School anthem team sing for us, national anthem to start out our school board meeting. I'd like to invite them up and their director, one of their directors, Mr. Rob Hahn. As they're all coming up, I'm just going to share just a little bit about this group. This is a group that has sung for more than 25 events already this year, including an invitation to open the state gymnastics meet at the University of Minnesota last month. The team is coming into the busiest part of their season with the many spring sporting events. It is not uncommon for this team to sing 5 to 6 events a week and sometimes multiple events on the same night. The team is student-led by Captains Austin Conrad and Ellie Remdy, and overseen by both Prior Lake High School choir directors Rob Hahn and Randy Erlinson. What I'd like to have you guys do is I want you to introduce yourself, and I've already asked this question, but who are the seniors here? Okay, so seniors, this is a nice special recognition night for you, because if you would, after you introduce yourself, would you please let us know what are your plans for next year?
Hi, I'm Sam Schuring. I'm a senior. I haven't really planned out my future because I'm going to take a gap year as soon as I'm done with graduation.
I'm Allison Gillett, and I plan to attend Normandale Community College for the first 2 years to get my associates and then transfer. So,
My name's Tori Gens, and I'm a sophomore.
my name is Megan McCarthy, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Elle Remdy, and I'm going to be going to St. Olaf College next year, and I'm going to be studying theater.
Always with a man of few words, Mr. Rob Hahn with us here this evening. Just want to note here too, while this is Music in the Schools Month, we asked Rob to put together just a few notes, and you know, we'd be remiss if we didn't really acknowledge all of the concerts and programs at the middle school level. And I know they have a busy spring as well as even a busy year, but also even at our elementary schools. I think really our elementary schools kind of set the foundation for getting kids exposed to music and then getting into middle school, starting out in band, vocal, and moving on upwards, so where you have, tremendous students like these that are willing to represent Prior Lake Savage Area Schools at all these different events. So thank you very much. Rob, is there anything you'd like to say? Would you like to sing for us?
No.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's give him another round of applause.
Next on the agenda are the personnel items. Mr. Matt Mons,
All
Director of
right.
Human Resources.
Good evening. We'll start with candidates for employment. I recommend the following candidates for employment and am seeking board approval.
Do I have a motion for the candidates for employment?
So moved.
By Ben, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mary, any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'll abstain.
That passes 6-0 with one abstention.
And next I present the following leaves of absence and am seeking board approval.
Do I have a motion for the approval of the leaves of absence?
So moved.
By Lee, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mary, any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0.
And next I'm presenting two additional positions in the educational support staff realm. Number one, an assistant boys and girls track and field coach at the high school, and then number two, a boys head volleyball coach. That is listed as a .5. That season is approximately half as long as most of our spring sports there. And so that's the reason for that proration. This is a full-time head coach there. And so with that, I make the recommendation. The only other point that I would add is both of these positions will be paid for through increased participation and the registration fees associated with that.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for the additional educational support staff?
So made.
By Stacy, do I have a second?
Second.
By Lee, any questions or comments? Stacy?
Just Matt, on the boys head volleyball coach, is that for intramurals? Is that the intramural program or?
No.
Boys. It's a boys, it's a new program.
Yeah, it's a new program.
Yeah, it's a new program, like Minnesota State High School? is?
Yes, yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. I thought it was an intramural thing. Okay, just wondering.
Do they,
Good job.
what season do they participate in?
Same as
Same.
girls. They actually play some of the girls' teams. It's actually pretty interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Girls win, right?
You learn something.
It's a toss-up, it depends. It's actually, Stillwater's done it, so I've been to a few Stillwater ones.
Oh,
last
okay.
year.
Really? Oh, it's interesting.
It's actually pretty close, because the girls have been practicing long.
Okay.
So we've had a motion and a second. Any other additional comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Next on the agenda is the approval of a job description.
Indeed, I'm bringing before you a new job description for the Assistant Director of Operations and Transportation this evening, and am seeking board approval.
Do I have a motion for the acceptance of the approval of the, or acceptance of the job description?
So made.
By Ben, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mary. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0. We have no unfinished business. Next on the agenda is new business, strategic direction A. I will hand it over to Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Holmberg.
Thank you, Chair Wolf. I'll invite our Mr. Kevin Schuttinger forward and elementary principals who are presenting this evening. As all of you know, as part of our planning and update, we have a goal around increasing measurable student growth and achievement, and one of those areas is looking at our E12 literacy practices. Earlier this year, as a board, you celebrated or recognized a group of teachers who were working on writing units of study at the elementary level, and so that's put some of the faces to really just some of the work that's happening. But the presentation tonight is really bringing the board updated on some work that Kevin is leading with the elementary principals in deepening student engagement in literacy through reading, balanced literacy, reading units of study, and then also the writing component, writing units of study. And, you know, our principals have really rolled up their sleeves, working as a professional learning community about how can we as a team continue to lead this work with our teachers in, you know, small group, individually, in order to benefit the practice of literacy. And so they've really done some tremendous work, and I'm really happy that they're here tonight. Kevin, it's great that you're here too. But I'm really happy they're here tonight to give a presentation to the board about this work that they started this year and that they're going to continue to carry forward moving as part of this goal area. So, Mr. Schuttinger.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holmberg. Good evening, board members. I'm really excited to share a brief update tonight, really focused on our elementary work under the E12 Literacy PDSA. And that group is really focused on developing a comprehensive study and review of our E12 literacy research, best practices, current district practices and resources, and really making some recommendations for future improvement. It's a three-pronged approach that we're utilizing this year. One, developing leadership capacity among our principals and other instructional leaders in the buildings. Two, evaluating instructional resources. Which kinds of resources do our teachers and students use in the practice of literacy? And three, making inroads and plans for future professional development for teachers. How do we make sure that teachers are getting the professional development that they need, and that is addressing the strengths and weaknesses that we're identifying in some of our work? So I'd like to invite Dr. Caroline Warner, Tim Bell, and Richie Kuczynski to share a little bit more about their experience with this.
Thank you very much for the opportunity just to share our excitement around the work that we've just started. Our elementary principals, all 7 of us, have embarked on a unified professional development around improving our core literacy instruction. So looking really at, as Mr. Holmberg had said, our reading and our writing to be able to make sure that we're enhancing that core literacy, as well as looking at just that culture of literacy that's happening in each of our elementary buildings, and making sure that that piece is first and foremost also so vital for all of our students to be able to be successful today, tomorrow, and next year and beyond. What we have started out with is our own professional learning, and so have created our own professional learning community, as Mr. Holmberg had said also, which is really all of us really digging deep into what that core instruction should look like. And then we have chosen the book, Literacy Unleashed, to really guide that practice around. So we started out with a book study to be able to really dig into that practice, what we know, but reaffirm what we know and why we know that. And then we've had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Hauk, the co-author, as well as Ms. Novak. We've met with Dr. Hauk 3 times now to be able to dig into what we read, ask the questions, and then really be able to understand more about that literacy classroom visit model. Richie will be able to explain a little bit about just that what, and then Tim will explain a little bit about the why we're doing that. The exciting part, I know just from finishing a few of those visits in just at Jeffers Pond, is how we really get a chance to see what that literacy culture is and to use that to help guide more professional development and support teachers. I was just able to talk at a staff meeting this morning and share the exciting things that I'm seeing and what I'm hoping for just at Jeffers Pond, and I'm super excited to be able to share that now with all of my colleagues to say how are we really enhancing that literacy, that core literacy for all of our students in Prior Lake Savage schools.
Good evening. Thanks for having us here. Again, my name is Richie Kuczynski. So what is a classroom visit? What it is it's a checklist of very specific things that we are looking for. And what it is it's we spend an average of 3 to 5 minutes in a classroom. And what we do is we literally walk in, we look at the walls, look at the classroom library, but then we look at the instruction. And we look at what the teacher's doing, what the teacher's saying, how the kids are interacting, how they're responding. And what it is it's meant to be a snapshot. We know that, of course, we're not going to see a breadth and depth of a literacy lesson in 3 to 5 minutes. But what it does is it allows us to see trends across our classrooms and then across our district. So we spent 3 to 5 minutes literally in every single classroom to kind of get a baseline data. And as Dr. Warner shared, it was very eye-opening, very exciting to see things that we're doing very well, but also things that we know that we can get better at. And that, again, that's the whole point of it, is to to guide our professional development and then our commitment to continuous improvement. But other things too is that it also allows us to have the language and the specific feedback to provide to teachers. So that is one thing that is very interesting as we're having conversations in staff meetings or in the hallway, or hey, I really liked what I saw, tell me more about that lesson. It was very, very good language that we can help continue to improve our practice in that leadership capacity. And as I mentioned, it identifies literacy patterns and student learning across all elementary schools. One little side comment to this is back in early February, all 7 of us attended the MESPA Institute, Minnesota Elementary Principal Association, professional learning in Bloomington, and we actually kind of did an unconference, an opportunity for anybody to kind of hold a learning opportunity. So we held one with elementary, all of our team. And one of the things that we heard from many other districts that attended was how powerful it was that we were all doing it together. All 7 schools participating in this same work was very well received and very exciting. We did hear from a lot of other individuals that 1 or 2 schools might have tried this approach in different districts, but the fact that we were very unified and collective as a group is, I think, speaks a testament to just our district and our professional responsibility to our students to continue to improve. So we did our first round right before spring break. We're working with Kevin, and then of course Bonnie Hauk, Dr. Bonnie Hauk, and then Gwen Molden, our curriculum specialist, is helping us as well. And we just this past week we got our data back, and it was very interesting to see across the district kind of where each school compares and where there's just some areas of we're very strong. We've had some learning on this, but also to say, wow, we have some areas here that we really need to continue to grow and be better at. And we've also, just from some conversations, we've also had the opportunity to kind of tweak the tool a little bit, the little instrument, to provide us more feedback to see exactly what we're looking for. So teachers are very excited about it. They know that we've been working on this. We know that we've said all along this is our learning, but this is best practice for students, and we look forward to continuing this work, but also propelling it into next school year. And then as we said in the beginning, it really informs professional learning to improve balanced literacy instruction. So our district is committed to balanced literacy, so that there's components of large group, small group, individual group, and then of course mini lessons that go with that. So we're learning, and we are growing and having a good time together. So, and again, the ultimate goal is that it improves our student learning and provides teachers the capacity to continue to increase and reflect upon their practice as well. So, yeah, with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bell.
I don't have anything left to say. Thank you. Thank you for letting us be here and talking about some of the things that we think are exciting in what's going on. But why are we doing this? Part of all of the research will say that principals is either number 1 or number 2 in the importance of gaining student achievement, in making sure that all students get what they need. We like to think that we're the instructional leaders. We know that we're just part of the team. Secondly, that with our continued professional development in literacy, we want to keep up with our staff. We want to keep up with what our teachers know, what the best practices are, and how we can move forward. Third is that we are using action research. We're using authentic data. We're not using, well, I think I saw this, or I think my teachers need this, or I'm hearing this. We get to see it. We're analyzing it. We're doing it more than once. We hope by the time we come next time, we will have at least 2 more rounds under our belt so that our data will be even richer. And the bottom line with everything that we do is that we know it will increase student achievement when we are using all of the pieces of our balanced literacy to their fullest potential and keeping the integrity of what we're supposed to be doing alive and well and strong. And of course, we would be remiss if we did not hit our frameworks for the future, and it fits so perfectly with increasing measurable student growth and achievement. We look forward to coming back to see you again, and thank you for your time.
All right. Don't.
And as Tim mentioned, we will be coming back in May to have a full update on both elementary and secondary work and some more in-depth results from some of the data they're collecting, as well as a professional development plan for the next few years related to literacy. Thank you very much.
Okay. Don't go. This is just a report. No board action is requested right now, but is there any questions or comments for the team? Mary?
Well, me. You know, this is fascinating work, and I applaud you for your, basically for your, you know, whole, holistic involvement in this process, which I do think is great, because you don't usually hear every single elementary school and all that participating. You know, one of the questions that came through my mind when I heard the 3 to 5 minutes is, how do you actually do the observation in that short a time with the live classroom without disrupting the classroom and getting a full effect?
Take a shot at it? Okay. I'll relay an incident that happened just today. There were 7 of us that went over to Grainwood to look at guided math. We went into a first grade classroom. There was not one student that turned around to look at us when we came in. The teacher was the kids were so engaged in what they were doing. Even after the instruction, they had a 11-minute mini lesson, a practice, and then back to, they didn't even stop to say, what are you doing here? We were a little bit more of a distraction in a 4th grade class because we happened to know some of the kids that when we walked in. But it's amazing how the kids get used to, the students get used to their routines, what they're doing. We become more of an annoyance, not a novelty. You know, so that if we stay out of their way when we're doing their observations. And one of the things that we get to do is in our 3 to 5 minutes is if the teacher's not talking, we can go visit with the kids. So we're looking to see, do they know what the learning target is? Do they know what they're supposed to be doing? And if they know that, then we get a good sense that they know what to do next. So, okay.
Sidebar, a few meetings ago, you met some of the teachers who were participating in Workshop Live, and that's a similar kind of a phenomenon where there are maybe several teachers observing one teacher teach a lesson, and then they reflect on it afterwards and take it apart and plan for the next day. We're starting to break that, you know, culture of, oh, there's just another person in my room seeing me teach. And we're going to learn from it, and we're going to do it together. So it's less of a kind of a scary evaluation, sort of a presence, but rather the, hey, we're all here learning together.
Mr. Holmberg had a comment.
Well, number one, you know, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but I applaud your efforts for your commitment on coming together around literacy. And particularly, too, you know, balanced literacy is not teaching from a basal. It's customized, personalized learning approaches for kids where they're at. And so, you know, I think at the core of what you're trying to do is reach that consistent standard of fidelity for implementation of what does quality instruction look like in reading and writing, and how do we continue to engage. And so I applaud you for your work in that. I look forward to you guys coming back in May and talking about those next steps. But just, you know, can you share a little bit of some of the preliminary feedback you've heard from teachers? You know, you got 7 principals traipsing around, you know, going into these classrooms. You're going to draw some attention. But what's been some of the feedback that you've heard from teachers around your learning and around the data that you're collecting?
First of all, it's vulnerable to say, you know, we're learning this. You know, so I think sharing that we are learners too. We're all learning together as a learning organization here. So just kind of started off with that. That was kind of our first message that, you know, we are learning this. We're going through this. But I think what it is the commitment, I think. A lot of times I think in education, historically sometimes people have felt that, you know, there's always a new initiative or something will come and go, but this is sticking. And what that looks like is it's, you know, continued conversation in learning teams, continued conversations in staff meetings and professional learning. But just to say that, you know, we've seen this, but for me personally, the conversations that I've been able to have with some teachers after I've visited their classrooms, because again, that's our goal as administrators is to always try to connect what we see with what we learn, but also to help ask those questions of, I saw this kid doing that, please tell me more about that. Because to answer your question, we don't always get to see everything that happens in just those snippets. So, but also to kind of be more present and be able to have more concrete things to talk with our colleagues about, but also with teachers about. When you're talking about kids and talking about literacy and talking about student personalized learning, it's exciting. There's a synergy there that kind of creates a buzz among the school. So to know that all teachers, all classrooms, and all schools are doing the same work, I think is it's kind of invigorating almost. So.
Other piece that I would add with the classroom visit model, it's meant to be that overview of the entire school, or in our case, the entire district for that piece. So we're really mindful, we've read about that, we've talked with Dr. Hauck about that. It's not about one specific teacher with some specific piece. What Richie said is, absolutely, because I know I can talk about literacy with more fidelity and with more clarity, but it also, what I feel our power is going to be, is to be able to look at what are those places that we can build more capacity, because we're doing really great things and we're working really hard as teachers to help our students be great readers and writers. I know we can keep continuing to improve. Why we're doing our PDSA on this exact method is because we know and believe that piece is part of that picture too.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions or comments? No? Thank you very much, and we look forward to your visit in May. Next on the agenda is Facilities Planning and Construction, presented by Assistant Superintendent Mr. Holmberg.
All right. Good evening, Chair Wolf, members of the board. As you can see up here, I do have the presentation dated March 5th. This was the original evening that I was going to present this. This is the same presentation that we've just carried through, although this is the rescheduled meeting. So this evening, we're talking about, we're going to do a quick review of parameters of the work that you as a board have been engaging in on short-term capacity enrollment planning, decisions on open enrollment, and then specifically seeking action tonight on maintaining 5 pre-K sections in neighborhood schools, seeking approval on a couple elementary boundary adjustments for 18-19, and then seeking approval to assign a new neighborhood development to Red Tail Ridge. So we started this work on short-term capacity planning and facilities back in October and set some parameters around that. And the direction to us was ensuring that as we talk about the short term, going through the next couple of years of building additions and renovations, we are going to be tight with our current capacities. But how can we look for opportunities so that elementary students have similar experiences relative to capacity? To the extent possible, we know that transitions for families are difficult. So as we look at short and long term, how do we minimize families moving twice? Particularly short term, what we're asking tonight, but then ultimately in 2020 with the opening of a new elementary school, are we looking far enough down the road where we're not asking families to move twice to the best extent that we can right now with what we have? And that pertains to students that are open enrolled into the district, in-district transfer students, and resident students. And then as a board, you also discussed that open enrollment decisions can come at a different time relative to attendance boundaries. You did take action at the December 11th meeting on open enrollment that you see here for kindergarten and at grades 1 through 12. So that's part of our planning moving forward. And then as we look at short-term capacity planning, these are some of the things that we're looking at. Certainly construction of additional classrooms, open enrollment, those two things, program placement, boundary changes, and then utilizing existing spaces as we start to get closer to the start of the 18-19 school year. And so that brings us up really to the first thing that we're seeking board action on. I will go through the entire presentation, and then as a board, you can take these singularly or as a group. for approval moving forward. So at this time, as we look for the 2018-19 school year, we're recommending to maintain 5 sections of pre-K at the neighborhood schools. These are the same neighborhood schools. There was a question from a board member prior to the meeting around, did we grant approval for these neighborhood pre-K sections to be in the neighborhood schools anyway? And no, as an administration, we did not come forward seeking board approval for this. But why this has been part of our conversation is that this is classroom space that could be used for K-5 as we look at our programs in our elementary schools. And so that's why we're paying attention to it. And that's why as we look at next year and where we're recommending, we're making a conscientious decision and seeking approval on maintaining those 5 neighborhood pre-K sections at those schools. 2 at Jeffers Pond, 2 at Greenwood, and 1 at Glendale Elementary. We also had conversation around elementary attendance boundaries. This is the discussion area, as you can see. And specifically, the two areas that we're talking about for 18-19. Currently, a neighborhood that attends Westwood, proposing that to Glendale, and then also a Red Tail Ridge neighborhood, proposing that to Glendale as well. And then finally, we have a new development that's just down the street from Red Tail Ridge. This is within our walking distance, and we have a path all the way from that neighborhood to Red Tail Ridge. And so this would not be something for transportation, but students would be walking to school. And as we look long-term, again, coming back to that minimizing families moving twice, as we look out with a new elementary school coming online in 2020, we do not foresee this neighborhood going anywhere else other than Red Tail Ridge at this time. So, with that, we are seeking board action this evening on maintaining those 5 pre-K classrooms in the neighborhood schools, the adjustment of the elementary attendance boundaries in 18-19, and then assigning Madeline Point, the D.R. Horton development, to Red Tail Ridge Elementary. So with that,
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you.
We'll take each of these 3 items individually. So do I have a motion for the approval of the attendance boundary changes as detailed in the presentation?
So moved.
By Lee, do I have a second?
Second.
By Ben. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Holmberg? See, I will make a comment. This has been out, all parents affected have been identified and communicated with. We've had a couple study sessions to review this, and we've gotten some parent feedback, and we responded to those. So,
one other thing to add there is pending approval or board action tonight, we have communications ready to go with those with all parents and families that will be affected for next year. And then I know our elementary principals, Mrs. Yetzer, Mrs. Molitor, and Mrs. Walensky are going to be very thoughtful in planning to do some transition activities with families to meet, as those families move forward pending board approval this evening. So,
are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
That passes 6-1. Next on the agenda is the approval of the neighborhood school pre-K sections placement for 2018-2019. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of that motion?
So made.
By Stacy, do I have a second?
Second.
By Todd. Are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Holmberg?
Jeff, I have
Go ahead, Mary.
question, and that's, I know we're approving this for next year, next school year. I just wanted to ask you to reiterate the long-term plan to consolidate, I believe, the pre-K once the construction is done.
So, yeah, thank you for that. As we look, what we're asking for is with the 5 sections here, pre-K for 18-19, we are going to be asking the board to look at this again for 19-20 and relative to our student enrollment. But once our new elementary opens in 2020, our Loyola Del Lago program would move out of Edgewood, thereby providing more space at Edgewood for pre-kindergarten programmings, preschool programmings. And then where we would have space available, we would continue to offer the neighborhood schools with the new, but predominantly most of our program would come back to Edgewood School as a pre-K early learning center.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Next is the approval of the Madeline Point D.R. Horton assignment to Red Tail Ridge attendance boundary area. Do I have a motion for the approval of that motion? By Ben. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Melissa? Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
I have one question.
Go ahead, Mary.
We talked about this at the study session, and maybe just as a review, when is the new D.R. Horton development going to be mature and actually contribute to Red Tail?
We anticipate, based on the information we've received from the city of Savage, it'll be a development that has about 34 homes in it. They anticipate anywhere between 8 and 10 homes over the next 3 years. So even for this fall, 2018, we anticipate, some families moving in there. Now, of course, that might be elementary and secondary students as well.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the AIA contract approval. Included in that approval tonight are the A232 general conditions and the supplementary conditions, the A232 additions and deletions, and the A132 for trade contractors, presented tonight by Executive Director of Business, Ms. Sink.
Good evening, Chair Wolf, Mr. Holmberg, and board members. Tonight you have, and you've seen earlier, and has been also talked about, these contracts have been talked about at our finance and facility meetings. These two agreements, the A232, that's the general conditions of the contract for construction, the construction manager, and it sets the rights and responsibilities of the district, Nexus, and the contractor in relationship to the projects. It's adopted by reference into the A132, which is the other agreement that you have before you, and that's the agreement between the owner and, which is the district, and the contractor, and it outlines the basic terms of the work, including when payments are to be made. So those are the two agreements before you, and we're recommending board approval.
Do I have a motion for the acceptance of the two AIA contracts before us?
So made.
By Stacy. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Todd. Are there any questions or comments?
I have
Go ahead, Melissa.
I was hoping that the main attorney, would be able to answer some of the questions, because we did have some questions come up at the study session. A question about 14.2, termination by the owner for cause, that's on page 47. Who determines the cause?
I'm sorry, Chair Wolf, I didn't receive any questions before,
Right.
so I wouldn't be able to answer those questions at this meeting.
Okay. Yeah, the board chair or the superintendent did not receive any written questions prior to our protocol, as laid out in our protocol, so.
I understand, but I was hoping that that might be something we might be able to do. What about the termination by owner for convenience, the term length? Is there an amount of time? That's on 14.4.
Just so that you know, each of our projects, we give them deadlines of when the work is to be done, and so those would be included as part of those agreements. When the substantial completion of the work would be done, all of those would be included as part of that A132. And when we receive the bids, we would be, that's included in that information.
Are there any other questions or comments? Go ahead. Lee?
I was just going to say that my understanding is that the lawyers have reviewed all of these documents thoroughly, and it's gone through the Facilities and Finance Committee, and the recommendation from them is to go forward. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. Stacy, did you have a? Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
That passes 5-2. Next on the agenda is advertise for bids for Bid Pack 5, presented tonight by Director of Operations and Transportation, Mr. Delwo.
Good evening, Chair Wolf, School Board, Mr. Holmberg. I have before you a request to continue our long-term facility maintenance projects. These have been previously approved by the school board, recently reviewed by the Facilities Finance Committee. Bid Package 4 includes, Bid Pack 5 includes building envelope at Five Hawks. And with that, it was replace cracked and spalled brick, some tuck pointing and insulation of vertical exposed soldier course, replace failed windows and exterior doors, repair foundation cracks, building sidewalk sealant, repair some stucco, and replace some single pane classroom and gymnasium windows. Again, these are pre-approved projects by the board. I am asking for permission to advertise for bid.
Do I have a motion for the acceptance or for the permission to go out and seek bids for Bid Pack 5?
So moved.
By Ben, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mary, are there any questions or comments?
My typical question or comment. Are we going to have a link to the RFP online, or are we going to do a phone number again?
This is a bid, so there's no RFP on this. This is an advertised bid.
Is there a link to the electronic version of the bid?
No, not for this one.
No, for that one, okay. How is that going to be then made in the newspaper? How is that
It
gonna-
will be
yeah.
advertised in the newspaper, it'll be advertised at France, and it'll be advertised possibly at Dodge. So
Okay.
similar to the way we've done them bids before.
Okay, is this going to be a phone number to call France Reprographics, or is this going to be an actual link to the bid and France Reprographics?
The contact information for France will be in the notification.
All right.
Are there any other questions or comment?
I was just curious
Go
about
ahead,
the window
Melissa.
replacements at Five Hawks.
Mhm.
Is it interior windows, exterior,
Exterior windows.
just damage?
Single pane glass were, they're from the 70s. It's long-term facility maintenance.
Have we had any discussion about bulletproofing any kind of windows, if we're going to do any replacements?
Not as of yet.
Thank you.
Just question, this bid pack is part of the long-term facilities maintenance that was rolled over to the referendum proceeds, correct?
It's bond money.
Bond money, yeah.
So we bonded long-term facility money.
Oh, okay, so it's outside that. Okay. And this bid process doesn't deviate at all from our previous protocol?
No.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the 2018-2019 school board meeting dates. Mr. Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Holmberg.
In your board packet is the school board meeting schedule for 18-19. I think there is one note of change there, November 19th, study session. That is a change date from the original. And so just trying to make sure things are in line here as we get into 18-19, setting up our meeting schedule. So we are seeking approval on that this evening.
Before I ask for a motion, there is an additional change in May of 2019. We will be going the first and the third Mondays for the regular and the study session, because sandwiched in between those is the Community Fest. So those dates will have changed. So just to let you.
So it's not May 6th and May 20th?
No, it will be the 6th and the 20th, and then May 12th will be the Community Fest in 2019.
It's usually September.
Martha, am I correct? No, where am I
That's
confused?
September.
Is the November one, right? No.
No,
September?
Isn't there another change? No?
Just one.
Okay. But just to
There
give
is-
you an update, that is the first and the, normally we are, God, am I confused?
No, we're usually the second.
Memorial Day. I knew there was
Another
a reason
holiday in there.
there. I couldn't remember. All right. All
Question,
right, do I have
Rich?
a motion? Go.
Well, you're going to talk about changes. I was just going to bring up one other, there's an added study session potentially for December 17th, which we've not done 2 meetings before.
In December?
In December.
Okay. I think we're holding that date open just in case.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question, Rich.
Uh.
Have we, a couple of months ago, we were opposite of city council meetings, and then we somehow got to be on the same night as city council at one point? Was there any observance or reflection with that so that they would be opposite?
From what I understand, I think city council changed their meetings.
They changed.
Yes, they did. The Prior Lake City Council meetings, yes.
Yep.
Okay, so are we not on the same night as them?
I believe
after
we're
their
not on the
change?
same evenings at all.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm unsure of, the Savage is on opposite schedule. So, all right, I need a motion for the acceptance of the board schedule for 2018-19
So made.
by Stacy. Do I have a second?
Second.
From Lee. Any other questions or comments that I could confuse you all with? No. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Next on the agenda is the policy. Second readings of these policies presented tonight by Assistant Superintendent Mr. Holmberg.
So in your board packet, we have policies that were presented back in the February work session for first read on 522. I'll just do a quick overview of the different things, but we had, for 522, number one, all of our policies really closely are aligned to MSBA's, and there are some things that we, as we look at, Prior Lake Savage Area Schools, we do have some additions or maybe some addendums to this, but many of these are very close to MSBA policy. And so for 522, there were just some minor updates, just changes of titles. And, as it was pointed out at the time, it is largely around Title IX. We did talk to MSBA. They did not recommend putting Title IX in the title of this. They just kept it there. It was their recommendation, just keeping it as, student sex non-discrimination. So with that, that is the change. That's just the slight revisions to that policy. Policy 528 was also updated per MSBA. Again, some Title IX language. 516, this one was a replacement. Ours really was not in alignment with 516 MSBA and student medication. And so just looking at it and bringing ourselves into alignment, we're recommending that we replace 516 with the MSBA version that's in your packet at this time. So that's why you see a lot of material changes to this one. 518 has been revised on palliative care, DNR, do not attempt resuscitation. This has also been a revision from our policy. There was Deb Anderson, our Director of Special Education, did provide an update to the board that this is a shift. Any students that have DNI orders usually have very clear orders, or they also have a health service personnel who's with them. So we usually defer to that, but our policies are that we are gonna continue to render care, call emergency services in the event that there is an emergency. So there is a revision there through that process, through that policy, excuse me. 521, again, some slight updates from MSBA and some changes to the titles that are listed in that policy. And then on the next one, 523, and then we also have in here policy 420 are duplicates. And so 523 is the student section, 420 is the employee section. So we certainly could remove 420, or we could put a note, which is what we're recommending, or you could put a note on there that this is pertaining to students. There's also a comparable staff one in 420. So we cross-reference policies, but as of this time, we're recommending just going with policy 420. Okay. 530, is new per MSBA. And I think the other follow-up question is, we did have, there were two questions. One was on, food allergy and anaphylaxis networks. That's currently listed on our board website under policies. We have moved those procedures into student wellness policy 514. So we'll be bringing that policy forward as part of our Review of 500 series. So I know we haven't lost track of that one, but we're combining that with policy 514.
There's another question with regards to that policy, and that's because there's a sports policy.
Right, so sports physicals, it's found on activities. So yes, thank you. So when students are doing their activity sign up, that's when that portion is completed.
Okay, so there's no conflict.
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, just a clarification then. 420, why is that included? And did
So
we
it's-
review that during the study session?
We did.
Did? Okay, because I don't see it on the list.
523.
Yeah.
Okay.
523 is
concern
crossed
with
out on
that.
our board packet, and 420 is active, it looks like.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what
So you're not looking for approval of 420 tonight?
No.
Okay.
Well,
it's
we're
a
getting rid of
change.
523.
So 420 was, I believe,
Students and employees.
420 is the staff or personnel. I believe as a board, you went through those last year, correct?
Yeah, but we're changing the name of it, aren't
We're
we?
changing the name. We need to do something.
I believe the name is the same,
Students
correct?
and employees.
Please?
So 523, let me just double check here to make sure that,
520 students, education. and medical
523 is
needs
just
of
students.
You suggested combining them.
yes, yeah. Oh, yes. So it would be students and employees.
That would be a change then.
That is a change, and I disagree with it. I just disagree with it.
Okay, so we should add on the policies 420 there in our list. That's not on the agenda.
Okay.
All right, so do I have the motion for the acceptance of policy 522, 528, 416, 518, 421, the 521, excuse me, policy 420 and policy 530, and then policy 523?
There's always one.
That's my goal, unless you want to do these individually.
I still have some questions on it.
Okay, we'll do them, do I have a motion for the acceptance of 522? Policy 522.
So made.
By Stacy, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mary. Are there any questions or comments?
A clarification on that, Rich. Can
Go
we
ahead.
add in a policy to go through if we don't list it in the initial,
First read.
well, either first read or even in the agenda approval?
Oh, you mean 420?
I have 420 on here.
It's not on mine.
I,
Oh, this
I
one
was
down here?
missing a couple things
Yeah.
on my board pack. and I
420?
just downloaded the latest one about the gifts. That wasn't on my board pack, so I'm trying to,
This 420 is
An
on the
old
board
one.
packet.
Yeah. What are you saying?
It's
not?
420 is on the board packet, but did the board review 420 during our study session?
Well, if there's questions.
it the
we should
first
just
pull
pull
that one
Just
out
pull it
then.
and put it to the next.
Okay, we will.
We can certainly bring that one back
Okay.
with 523. To give board members a chance to really compare both and maybe have another discussion at our work session.
Okay. So do I have a motion for policy 522?
I
Acceptance?
think I said it, didn't I?
You-
Martha did state. Okay, we had a motion and a second, Martha, for 522. Thank you. Are any questions or comments on policy 522? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of policy 528?
So made.
By Stacy, do I have a second?
second.
By Todd, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of policy 516?
So moved.
By Melissa, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mary, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Next, do I have a motion for the acceptance of policy 518?
So made.
By Stacy, do I have a second?
Second.
By Todd. Are there any questions or comments on policy 518? Lee?
I have a question, and I apologize, but Matt, do we have any legal responsibility when it's a DNR that we ignore it? You know offhand, I know I'm putting you on the spot, and I apologize.
No.
I mean, that we couldn't be sued or anything.
It's atypical for the policy to read the way.
Okay.
And so most districts, their policy reads the opposite, actually, so that's typically.
So this is bringing it in line.
Correct.
What? Say
So
again.
this would bring
bringing
us
it in
in
line.
line with how the policy is typically written in the school environment.
In a school environment, okay.
Yep.
I mean, coming from a medical background, this makes me really nervous.
Right.
I can't do that in a medical area. So I just wanted to make sure that legally we're still okay, even though we have this policy.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That passes.
I abstain.
And one abstention, that passes 6-0 with one abstention. Policy 521, do I have a motion for the acceptance of policy 521?
So moved.
By Mary, do I have a second?
Second.
By Ben, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Are we doing 523?
No, we'll pull that one.
Okay, we're going to pull policy 523 and policy 420. Next is policy 530, the immunization requirements. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of policy 530?
So made.
By Stacy, do I have a second?
Second.
By Lee, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Right, next on the agenda is administrative reports, superintendent report.
All right, I do have a couple things to share as part of this report. And so, you know, earlier this month, in March, our graduation rates were released from the Minnesota Department of Education. I believe there was a communication sent out to all board members. We are seeing our graduation rates continue to rise, and we're also narrowing our achievement gaps that we're seeing in many areas. And there's a few areas that we do need to continue to pay attention to, and even the areas where we're closing the gap. And we definitely have the opportunity coming up this spring because we're starting to get into the assessment season with MCAs, and all of our schools will be busy with that. And so I know our staff and our principals are preparing those process and procedures, you know, and teachers are getting all the necessary training in order to conduct those assessments appropriately. Last Friday, Dr. Stalo and I were with the elementary principals and several staff from the Teaching and Learning Department where we visited Farmington and Lakeville, a couple of their elementary and middle school sites, looking at how they're implementing project-based learning and multi-age learning opportunities. And from the standpoint of just getting a better sense of what are the programs that are out there, what are some of the results they're receiving, and are those some things that we could be exploring moving forward in the future. Tomorrow, on Tuesday, March 27th, I will be participating in the City of Prior Lake and Tribal Relations Training. We were invited by the mayor to join and be at the table for that afternoon session, so I'll be representing the district. April 6th, Friday, we have Shiraki Holly back in the district, and he'll be meeting with our administrators, our teaching and learning TOSAs, and peer coaches to do a workshop between 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Really, the workshop is focused on how to support teachers in instruction and instructional coaching. And that will be done here at the DSC. And I would invite all of you as board members, if you'd like to join and see some of that work. We'll be here from 11 to 3 o'clock. Just let me know so that we can get you a lunch.
What day was that?
Friday, April 6th. Next, and this is similarly to how we started the meeting this evening, you know, school safety has been a topic of conversation. It has been for quite some time, and you know, we continue to look at our protocols and procedures around school safety, And that's been very evident as we've been talking about the renovations, remodeling, and design work of all of our school sites and facilities. And we're going to continue to bring those updates forward to the board through our design team process. On April 11th, we are having our annual community, tabletop exercise crisis management review. We do invite our community partners from Savage, Prior Lake, Scott County, EMS services, and we spend that time talking about protocols, procedures, and really how do we collaborate together in partnership in when there are times that there's not a crisis, as well as in times that there may be a crisis. Our school resource officers are heavily engaged in that, as are the chiefs of police, and so it's really something that we look forward to, but also it's part of our process as we continue to look at, are our current processes and procedures really, are we in a good place, and do we need to continue to revisit and get better with those processes? And so I know future meetings, Dr. Stallo and Christy Musman will be talking a little bit about how we move forward with some of our internal processes and procedures with school safety. And then looking at down the road at a board work study session around school safety. And then in general, we're in that springtime of the year. Welcome back from spring break. As you heard from our national anthem group today, there's a lot of activities that are happening throughout the district. We're starting to get in with athletics and co-curriculars and fine arts. We've got a lot of things happening at all of our sites throughout the spring. We invite you and as board members and as the community as a whole to look at those things that are happening and participate to the extent that you can. Community Education is just sending out their flyer for summer offerings, and so I know that that's a flyer that they try to appeal for all demographics, all age areas, to try to help folks with things that they may need to meet their interests, as well as student camps. So we're ramping up here again in the spring. So that concludes the report this evening.
All right, administrative reports. Are there any? Okay. Are there any board reports this evening?
I just
Stacy?
have one. Last month, the C Day at the Capitol got canceled because of the weather. So there is a reschedule on that. I believe it's April 9th. So if anyone's interested in joining, maybe just send me a note. It's usually from about 9:30. I think we're down there until about 1:30 maybe. And we'll be talking about our legislative agenda, as well as we also want to bring up school security also. So having some FaceTime with them.
All right, Lee?
No.
I have one. We had the Facilities and the Finance Subcommittee meeting. We got early looks at the new design for the Edgewood Westwood. We discussed Bid Pack 4 and Bid Pack 5 that we've talked about tonight. We also had a block drawing of the next rendition of the new entrance at the north end of the high school. How we're going to work that, and had a discussion about updating the east side entrance to make it a secure entrance sometime this summer. I also had the opportunity in our every other month meeting with Dr. Stallo and with the mayor of Prior Lake, Kurt Briggs, and Frank, the city administrator. He talked about the SMC training. They are very excited about that, so if you have the opportunity to attend that greatly, it was real eye-opening for those two on the presentation. And also, they're very interested in updating the school board on the road construction plans for this summer and for next summer. There'll be quite extensive road construction. So as far as transportation to our buildings, will need to be updated there. And lastly, on a personal note, I had the opportunity last Monday to attend the retirement a session or a meet and greet kind of for Barry Stock at the city of Savage. He's been a great friend and partner for this district, and his knowledge and history of development in the city of Savage will be greatly missed as he is on to retirement. So that is my board report. Mary?
Dr. Stallo attended as the superintendent in residence the Southwest Metro, and meeting last week Tuesday, so that was very informative. And the Southwest Metro talked about their future goals in the special education area and their growth, and they're doing very, very well. For those of you who don't know, they opened up Freedom Farm, which is an animal equine rehabilitative area, not for animals, but for people. And they have in-resident kids there from the Southwest Metro District, which of course includes Prior Lake, who go there and stay and go through different types of emotional enhancements, training, regular classroom study, and they are definitely growing that program. So it's very exciting also because as a horse person, I've been involved and volunteered at Freedom Farms for years. So it's really good to see them have regular classrooms there and help with the kids. On another note, on a personal note, we had the first round of the State Science Fair research paper submittal. Several parents from Prior Lake and Shakopee joined me to help judge. I have been the lead judge there for 3 years now, and on the board of the Minnesota Academy of Science and Engineering that sponsors the program. And as you know, we take in kids from all over the state. I only did the final judging for the Elite 10, of which we pick 5 that go to Washington, D.C., and so we're desperately trying to get more and more kids involved in that. Of course, if the kid from your school district wins, the district gets $2,000 to $5,000 per kid, as well as the child gets about $16,000 to $20,000 in scholarship money, depending on if they win or not. But we had quite a turnout of Prior Lake and Shakopee parents whose kids go to Prior Lake to help judge that this year. So that was very good. I'd like to see more involvement from teachers and everything like that. That would be great. That's it.
Thank you. Todd, board reports. Go
Go
ahead.
And then one other thing, Mary and I were able to go into the high school last week and meet with Dr. Basic and kind of go through what we are, possibly the designs and kind of see it lunch in operation and everything. So it was kind of nice to, put a vision to what's going on and talk about security at the entrances and things like that, so.
Particularly the east entrance that you had just referred to, Rich.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, any other board reports? Okay, next, future events, the Career and Job Fair will be March 27th at the Prior Lake High School from 5 to 7. We'll have an early release day, April 5th. There will be no school for grades E through 12 on April 6th, and we'll have the regular school board meeting April 9th at this location here at 7 p.m. Seeing no further business before the board, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I have a quick question, Rich.
Go ahead.
Is there a rescheduled date on the meeting that we missed because of the snow emergency with the city of Prior Lake?
Yes, there is.
September or something, right, Martha?
October 15th. Thank you, Martha. You saved me
couldn't get it
again.
in
So,
before
yes, it has been rescheduled, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do I have a motion for adjournment? By Ben, do I have a second?
Second.
By Lee. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 7-0. We are hereby adjourned.